My name is Riley Carter, and I'm 29 years old. Right now, I'm sitting alone in my living room, staring at the brand new locks on my front door. The metal still smells faintly like cold dust and machine oil. My hands are still shaking, even though the locksmith left hours ago. If you'd looked at my life on paper this morning, before everything exploded, you'd probably say I'd made it. Marketing director at a mid-sized firm in downtown Portland. Good salary. Two-bedroom condo with my name alone on the deed. No kids, no roommates, no one's name on the mailbox but mine. It's the kind of life my mother loves to brag about at book club. If she trims off all the parts that make her uncomfortable, she'll tell people I'm so independent, that I rose through the ranks so young. She'll skip the part where I pulled 60-hour weeks for years while eating cold takeout over my laptop. She'll skip the panic attacks and the nights I lay awake wondering if I'd ever be allowed to want something that was just mine. That's what this condo is, or what it was. My parents are Richard and Helen Carter, 55 and 53 respectively. If you ask them, they'd tell you they raised two daughters. Me, the responsible one, and Savannah, 27, the sensitive artist. Everyone else calls her the golden child. When I was dragging myself through community college and then Portland State, juggling shifts and classes, they scraped and pinched to give Savannah a full ride to a private school. When she graduated with an art history degree and couldn't find a job, they didn't say, maybe pick up anything that pays rent. They bought her a brand new Honda Civic and welcomed her back home rent-free like a princess returning to her castle. I don't begrudge her that support, or at least that's what I always told myself. What I resent is how, somewhere along the way, my life became an emergency fund for everyone else. Riley makes good money. Riley doesn't have kids. Riley should help family. They say it like a prayer or a commandment. The only person who never talked about me like a walking safety net was Ethan Miller, my boyfriend. We've been together 2 years. He works in IT for a startup on the other side of downtown. He's the kind of man who checks that I locked my car without making me feel stupid. The kind of man who asks before he moves a mug in my kitchen because he knows I like my space a certain way. He's also the one who looked at this condo the first time he walked in, smiled and said, "I'm proud of you, Riley. Really proud." Like it was the most natural thing in the world to say. His ex-girlfriend, Chloe, never liked me much. She still floats around the edges of our lives. Mutual friends, the occasional tagged post. She once made a snide comment about me being career-obsessed at a party. I pretended not to hear it. I've spent most of my life pretending not to hear people like her. 3 weeks ago, Savannah's roommate situation fell apart. She'd been living with her boyfriend, Trevor, until she caught him cheating with a coworker. Instead of moving back home again, Savannah decided she needed independence. Independence. From their house, not their money. She started apartment hunting and very quickly discovered that a part-time boutique job doesn't go far in Portland's rental market. That's when my phone rang. "Riley," my mother began, using that bright tone that means she's already decided something. "We've been talking, and we've come up with a wonderful solution." Their wonderful solution was that Savannah would move into my spare bedroom for a little while she found a new place. They'd help with groceries at first, they said. Savannah would be such good company, they said. Sisters bonding, they said. "What spare bedroom?" I asked. "You mean my office?" "Because that second bedroom isn't empty. It's where I work from home 3 days a week. It's where I have thousands of dollars worth of equipment set up. It's where my life actually happens when I'm not on a Zoom call pretending I'm fine." I told them no, not "let me think about it," not "maybe later." No. "Mom, my condo is my sanctuary," I said. "I need my routine. I need my space. Savannah is messy. She's loud. She has no concept of boundaries. The last time she visited, she ate all my meal prep, stained my bathroom counter with mascara, and had friends over until 3 in the morning. I cannot live like that." I offered other options. I said I'd help Savannah look for cheap studios or roommate situations. I offered to lend her money for a security deposit, an actual loan with a written agreement. But apparently, boundaries don't count when you're the child who makes good money. "Riley, don't be selfish," my father said. "You have extra space. Family helps family." "Your sister is hurting," my mother added, soft and heavy. "How can you turn your back on her?" For the next 2 weeks, they circled me like vultures, picking at the same carcass. Every phone call was a guilt trip. Every visit came with another suggestion. Even Ethan, watching me pace the kitchen one night, said, "Maybe she could stay for a week or two, just until she figures things out?" I looked at him and something inside me went very, very still. This isn't a week or two, I said quietly. This is my parents deciding my life is a tool for fixing Savannah's. He apologized later, but the words stayed. I thought I'd made myself crystal clear. I thought no meant no. I was wrong. Yesterday, I went to my evening yoga class. It's the one thing that reliably shuts my brain up for an hour. On the drive home, my muscles were loose, my lungs were full. I was almost calm. Then I opened my front door. Boxes, suitcases, Savannah's bright floral duffel bag exploded open on the floor. My mother in my kitchen, rearranging my dishes. My father carrying one of my dining chairs into the second bedroom. And Savannah in the middle of my living room, barefoot, humming, unpacking her clothes into my office closet like she'd always belonged there. For a second, my brain refused to process it. I actually thought, this must be the wrong floor. Then Savannah looked up and grinned. Riley, you're home. I'm so glad you came around. This is going to be so fun. I couldn't feel my fingers. What? I asked very calmly. Are you doing in my condo? My mother turned with that tight smile she reserves for when I embarrass her in front of people. Oh, honey, we knew once you saw how much Savannah needed this, you'd understand. It's just temporary. My father didn't even bother to look guilty. Don't make a scene, he said. We're almost done. I walked down the hall and opened my office door. Savannah's clothes were hanging where my neatly labeled storage bins used to be. Her makeup bag was already open on my desk, next to my dual monitors. A scented candle I didn't recognize burned on the window ledge. Something in my chest cracked. Get out, I said. Riley, don't be dramatic, my father snapped from the doorway. Get out, all of you, now! Savannah's eyes filled with tears instantly. I thought we talked about this, she sniffed. I thought you were okay with... We did talk, I said, my voice shaking, and I said no, many times. My mother sighed like she was exhausted. Sweetheart, this is your sister. She has nowhere to go. We took your spare key last time we visited and had copies made. We had to, because we knew you'd push people away when you're stressed. You'll thank us later. The world tunneled. My spare key, from the kitchen drawer, for emergencies, for trust. You stole my key? I whispered. Riley, my father said sharply. We're your parents. This is family. We can't steal what we already... I pulled my phone out and opened the dial screen. You have 10 minutes, I told them. 10 minutes to get all of this out of my home, or I'm calling the police and reporting a break-in. They all stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. You wouldn't, my father scoffed. You're not calling the cops on your own family. So I did. I pressed 911 and put the call on speaker. The dispatcher's voice filled the room, and for the first time all evening, someone took me seriously. By the time the officers arrived, my parents were frantically stuffing Savannah's things back into boxes. My mother cried about ungrateful children. My father muttered about overreactions. Savannah sobbed about being abandoned. The officers listened to everyone, then looked at me. Legally, one of them said, this is your property. You didn't give permission. We can't arrest them on what we have right now, but they need to leave, and they can't come back without your consent. If this escalates, document everything. They suggested I change my locks, maybe install cameras. I nodded until my neck hurt. After they left, after my family finally disappeared down the hallway with their boxes and their outrage, I sat on the floor of my living room and cried until my throat burned. Then I wiped my face, grabbed my laptop, and called an emergency locksmith. $400 later, every lock was new. Front door, back door, windows. I ordered a smart doorbell and security cameras and scheduled next-day installation. My condo felt like a crime scene and a fortress at the same time. At 2 a.m, I typed out a message to my parents and Savannah, attached a photo of the new locks, and hit send. I have changed all locks and installed security cameras. Any attempt to enter my condo without my explicit permission will be considered trespassing and met with legal action. What you did was a violation of my privacy, my autonomy, and my rights as an adult. Until you can respect my boundaries and apologize for this, we have nothing to discuss. My phone started vibrating almost immediately. Calls, texts, notifications stacking on top of each other like an avalanche. I turned it face down on the coffee table, stared at the faint outline of my new deadbolt in the dim light, and realized something. They weren't going to accept this. They were going to escalate. And I had just drawn a line I couldn't step back over. For 3 hours after I sent that message, I watched my phone light up and go dark, like it was having its own seizure. First, my mother called, then my father, then Savannah, Then Mom again, because apparently one missed call doesn't count. I didn't answer, not once. Instead, I silenced everything, set my phone face down, and tried to breathe. The condo was finally quiet, but it felt like the eye of a storm, not the end of one. The next morning, I woke up to 97 unread messages. My mother had texted paragraphs about how family doesn't treat each other like criminals, how I was breaking her heart, how she was worried about my mental health. My father sent shorter, sharper messages. I was selfish, ungrateful, brainwashed by individualistic nonsense. Savannah's texts bounced between pleading and accusatory. Then there were the group texts. They'd started a family thread without asking me and dumped their version of events into it. By the time I saw it, aunts, uncles, cousins I barely knew had joined in, reacting, replying, choosing sides before I'd even said a word. My favorite was from Aunt Dorothy. Your parents just wanted to help your sister, and you called the police on them? You should be ashamed, Riley. I stared at it for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. Instead of responding, I screenshotted every message and dropped it into a folder I'd created on my laptop. Family Evidence. That was the first time I named it that way. Evidence. Not drama, not a misunderstanding. Evidence. The only person who didn't pile on was my cousin Tyler. He texted me privately. Heard the family version. Doesn't sound like the whole story. You okay? I told him what happened. The key. The boxes, the cops, the locksmith's receipt for $400. There was a long pause, then, "They tried something similar on me once," he wrote. "Tried to move my brother in while I was at work. I changed the locks, too. You're not crazy. Stay strong." I put my phone down and cried into my hands quietly. Not because it fixed anything, just because someone finally believed me. That night, Ethan came over with takeout and a worried crease between his eyebrows. "Your mom called me," he admitted, as soon as I locked the door behind him. My stomach dropped. "What did she say?" "That you're not yourself," he said, quoting with his fingers. "That you called the cops on them for no reason. That you're pushing everyone away. She tried to make it sound like you were spiraling." He looked at me carefully. "Are you okay?" I wanted to snap, to say, "Do I look okay?" But his face stopped me. He wasn't doubting me. He was scared for me. I told him everything. From the first phone call about Savannah moving into my father's "you won't call the cops on family" to the metal bite of the new locks. Ethan listened, jaw tight, fingers laced with mine. "Riley," he said finally, "this is not normal. I'm glad you called the police. I wish I'd been here." "Part of me keeps wondering if I overreacted," I whispered. "Like, it's just a key, right? Just a room." That little voice in my head keeps saying maybe you should have sucked it up for a month. "It's not just a room," Ethan said firmly. "It's your home. They broke your trust. They stole your key. That's not help. That's control." I nodded, but the doubt still sat like a stone in my stomach. 2 days later, my doorbell camera saved me. I was working from home, half listening to a marketing report on a conference call, when my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the doorbell app. I almost ignored it. Then a knot of dread tightened in my chest, and I tapped the notification. The camera feed popped up. Savannah, at my door. And she wasn't alone. A man in a work jacket stood beside her, tool bag in hand, a logo on his chest, a van behind them. A locksmith. My blood went cold. "Hold on," I told my coworkers, and killed my mic and camera on the call. Then I hit record on the doorbell app and grabbed my phone like a lifeline. 911, what's your emergency?" the dispatcher asked when I called. "There's an attempted break-in at my condo," I said, voice strangled but steady. "My sister is here with a locksmith trying to get in. She doesn't live here and has never lived here. I have security footage." The dispatcher took my address, told me officers were on their way. I ended the call and moved to the inside of my front door, careful not to make noise. Through the doorbell feed, I could hear their conversation. "I don't understand," the locksmith was saying. "You're sure this is your place?" "Yes," Savannah replied, fragile and breathy. "My roommate locked me out after an argument. She's being irrational. I just need to get my stuff." My roommate. "Riley," she added. Our names linked in a lie. I'd heard enough. I unlocked the deadbolt but kept the chain on, opening the door just a crack, enough for them to see my face, my ID, the steel in my eyes. "Hi," I said to the locksmith. "I'm Riley Carter. This is my condo. Only my name is on the deed. She does not live here and never has." I held up my ID and a copy of my ownership documents I'd printed after the last incident, like part of me already knew I'd need them. The locksmith's eyes flicked from my ID to Savannah to the paperwork. "Ma'am," he said slowly to Savannah, "you told me you lived here." Savannah's face reddened. I do. She's lying because we had a fight. She's throwing me out." I pulled my phone up so he could see the live camera feed. I called 911. They're on their way. You don't want to be here when they arrive, if you've been misled. His expression closed instantly. He stepped away from the door. "I'm very sorry," he told me. "I was told this was a roommate dispute." "It's not your fault," I said, voice taut, "but please don't attempt to open this door." He nodded, shouldered his tool bag, and turned to leave. Savannah grabbed his arm, voice rising. "You can't just leave me here," she shrieked. "She's lying. I have nowhere else to go." He gently pulled his arm free and walked toward the elevator, shaking his head. The moment the doors closed behind him, Savannah spun back to my door and pounded her fists against it. "You're ruining my life," she screamed. "You're seriously calling the cops again? Over what? A door? A stupid door? You are a monster, Riley." I took a breath, forced my voice to stay level. "Savannah, you are trespassing. You were warned before. Leave now, or I will press charges." She slid down the door until she was sitting on the hallway carpet, back against my wood, sobbing loud enough for the whole floor to hear. "I'm not leaving," she wailed. "I'm staying right here until you stop being insane and let me in." I gave her one last warning. Then I called 911 again. By the time the officers arrived, two of the same ones from last time, Savannah was in full meltdown mode. She leapt to her feet when they approached. "She illegally evicted me," she cried, pointing at my door. "We live together, and she changed the locks. She won't let me get my stuff." The officers looked tired. One of them knocked on my door. "Ms. Carter, it's Officer Diaz. Can we talk?" I opened the door fully this time, letting them see me. The new locks, the empty hallway behind Savannah. "She doesn't live here," I said. "She never has. I have the deed, the previous report, and the footage of her trying to get a locksmith to break in." I showed them the video on my phone. Their faces hardened as they watched. "Ma'am," Officer Diaz said to Savannah, "you've been warned about trespassing before. You cannot keep coming here. If you return again, we will arrest you. Do you understand?" Savannah's shoulders heaved. "So you're just going to let her throw me out on the street?" "You were never in," he replied flatly. "You need to leave, now." They escorted her to the elevator. She glared at my camera the entire time, eyes blazing with a hatred I'd never seen directed at me quite so openly. An hour later, my parents showed up. This time, they didn't try to open the door. They'd learned that lesson. Instead, they stood just out of frame, but well within earshot, and began their performance. "Riley!" my mother called through the door, her voice cracking. "How could you do this to your sister? She's staying in a motel because of you. She's terrified. We never thought we'd raise a daughter so cold." "She's not in a motel," I thought. I knew she was back home with them. The motel was just another prop in their play. My father took over, his tone hard. "If you don't help Savannah, we will never forgive you. You're choosing your precious condo over your family. When we're gone, Riley, you'll regret this. You'll regret standing over our graves, knowing you abandoned us." I didn't answer. I didn't move. The doorbell camera recorded every word. Inside, in my own kitchen, my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my mug. I put it down, braced myself against the counter, and counted my breaths. In, 4, hold, 4, out, 4, hold, 4. Ethan called that night, furious on my behalf. When I told him what happened, I could hear him pacing his apartment. "This is harassment, Riley," he said. "You know that, right? It's not just family drama anymore. They're stalking you. You need more than new locks." "I know," I whispered. I don't know what more looks like." "Lawyers," he said. "Paperwork. Something that puts a wall between you and them that they can't guilt-trip their way through." After we hung up, I opened my laptop and created a new folder, Legal. I moved screenshots, videos, text logs, and police reports into it. I labeled everything by date, by incident. I emailed my friend Daniel, who'd gone to law school with me before I'd switched majors, and asked for his help. He wrote back within an hour. "You have more than enough to send a cease and desist, and honestly, you're heading toward restraining order territory." The words made my stomach twist. Restraining orders. Against my parents. Against my sister. The thought felt like acid and relief all at once. Daniel drafted a letter for me. It was clinical and cold and full of phrases like continued harassment, trespassing, and legal action. I read it 3 times before I could bring myself to attach it to an email. As my cursor hovered over the send button on the group thread, Mom, Dad, Savannah, I saw another notification flash at the top of my phone. Savannah had posted a new Instagram story, a black and white selfie of her crying, captioned, "When your own sister makes you homeless for choosing love over money." Below it, my stomach sank further. Chloe, Ethan's ex, had replied with a heart emoji and, "You don't deserve this. Some people forget where they came from when they get a little success." My vision went hot at the edges. I clicked send on the cease and desist letter. The email flew out into the void, toward the three people who'd never believed my no meant anything, toward the first real line I'd ever drawn between us that came with consequences. I set my phone down. Outside my window, Portland's sky was already darkening, streetlights blinking on one by one. Somewhere on the other side of that darkness, my family was about to read a letter that didn't beg or justify or apologize. It warned, and I knew, deep in my bones, they were going to answer it with war. The cease and desist letter detonated exactly the way Daniel predicted. Within minutes, the group chat lit up like someone had poured gasoline across dry timber and flicked a match. "Mom, Riley, what is this? A threat against your own family?" "Dad, you think a lawyer scares us? Shame on you. Absolute shame." "Savannah, so this is who you are now. Heartless, soulless, cold. I can't believe I ever defended you." Then the calls came, and the voicemails, and the texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Family I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about who I was, who I should be, and what family apparently meant. My Aunt Karen wrote, "I hope you realize you're breaking your mother's heart. She's sobbing. Is that what you wanted?" Uncle David emailed me, "Success has changed you. If you were struggling, they'd help you without hesitation." Someone I didn't even know, apparently a cousin on my dad's side, DM'd me on Instagram to tell me I should seek therapy before destroying more lives. They all sounded the same. They all echoed the same script, and none of them cared what actually happened. But Tyler, bless Tyler, did. He sent me a screenshot of Savannah's latest post, a GoFundMe titled "Emergency Housing After Being Kicked Out by My Own Sister." She'd raised $200 already, a handful from strangers, a few from friends, and one from someone I hoped never to see involved in my life again. Chloe Ramirez, my boyfriend Ethan's ex, $50 donation. Comment, "No one deserves this. Stay strong, girl." My chest tightened. Chloe always hovered on the periphery, pretending she wasn't watching, pretending she'd moved on. But there she was, feeding my sister's fantasy of victimhood because it gave her an excuse to slip into our lives again. When I showed Ethan the screenshot, he went quiet, then angry, then ashamed. "I didn't know she was still keeping up with Savannah," he muttered, scrubbing a hand over his jaw. "I'll talk to her." "No," I said quickly. "Don't. It'll only add fuel. She wants the attention." He paused, then nodded. "You're right. Riley, this is out of control." He wasn't wrong. The next escalation came from a direction I never expected, my workplace. My boss called me into HR. I walked in with my stomach in knots, wondering what new fire I'd have to put out. "HR rep." Megan looked at me with that cautious, soft tone people use when they think you might break. "Riley, we received a phone call from your mother." Of course they had. "She told us you were experiencing a mental health crisis." Her voice dropped. "She said you were cutting off all family contact, behaving erratically, and possibly a danger to yourself." My breath froze in my chest. "She what?" Megan held up a hand. "We're not acting on anything. But when a family member calls making those allegations, we legally have to document it. We wanted to give you a chance to explain." I showed them the footage, the texts, the timeline. By the end, Megan looked exhausted. My boss looked furious. "This is harassment," he said flatly, "and we'll support you however we can." I nodded, swallowing the humiliation, the violation, the rage. That was the moment the last emotional thread snapped. I filed for restraining orders that same afternoon, against Savannah, against my mother, against my father. Daniel helped me prepare the paperwork, and when I left his office, the sunlight felt too bright, too loud, too sharp. I walked back to my car on trembling legs. "What kind of daughter files a restraining order?" my brain whispered. "The kind who's tired of being hunted," another voice answered. The hearing was scheduled 2 weeks later. 2 weeks of silence. Not peace, just silence. The dangerous kind. The waiting kind. The kind that pretends to be calm right before the sky splits open. And split open it did. When I walked into this courthouse that morning, flanked by Daniel and clutching my evidence folder tight enough to crease the cover, I froze. They were all there. Not just my parents in Savannah, but Aunt Dorothy, Aunt Karen, Uncle David, 3 cousins I hadn't spoken to since high school, even 2 people I didn't recognize. All of them dressed in black. Not professional black, not courtroom black, funeral black. Like they'd coordinated their outfits to stage a mourning procession for a daughter they claimed was lost to selfishness. My mother actually dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief when she saw me. Savannah glared at me like I'd run over her dog. I lifted my chin and walked past them, ignoring the whispers. She looks cold. Not even sorry. How can she live with herself? Look at her, so smug. Inside the courtroom, the judge looked like a tired grandmother who'd seen one too many family implosions. Her nameplate read, Judge Montoya. Her gaze was sharp enough to slice through stone. Let's begin, she sighed. Savannah was called first. She walked to the stand wearing a soft gray sweater, hair curled, makeup perfectly smudged, giving her the appearance of someone fragile, delicate, wronged. She cried almost immediately. Riley promised she'd let me stay, she said between sobs. But then she changed her mind and threw me out. She wouldn't even let me get my belongings. I just wanted to talk to her. I was desperate. Daniel leaned over and whispered, classic theatrical manipulation. Happens all the time. Stay calm. My mother testified next. Your Honor, she said, voice trembling with practiced heartbreak. My daughter has been mentally unstable lately. She cut off contact for no reason. She's paranoid. She's not well. We copied her key because we were afraid she'd lock herself inside and... Mrs. Carter, Judge Montoya interrupted, making unauthorized copies of an adult's house key is not a standard wellness check. My mother blinked like someone had slapped her. My father testified after that. He tried to take the stern patriarch approach. Judge, he said firmly, this is a family matter that does not belong in court. Riley is airing private issues in a public system. It's disgraceful. And as her father, I have every right to enter her home if I'm concerned for her safety. Judge Montoya raised an eyebrow. Mr. Carter, parental rights do not extend to breaking into your adult daughter's private residence. Sit down. And then finally it was my turn. I stood, walked to the stand, raised my right hand, and swore to tell the truth. Then I told everything. The timeline, the stolen key, the unapproved move-in, the police reports, the locksmith incident, the hallway screaming, the workplace harassment call, the Instagram smear campaign, the doorbell footage of their late-night guilt speeches. Daniel projected the videos onto the courtroom screen. The room was silent except for my mother's soft weeping. Savannah stared at her hands. My father shook his head at each clip, as if refusing to admit any of it happened. When Judge Montoya finally spoke, her voice carried that calm, heavy authority that no amount of drama could shake. Savannah Carter, she began. Have you ever legally resided at your sister's condo? Is your name on the deed or lease? Savannah hesitated. Her mouth opened and closed like she was searching for a loophole. No, she whispered. But... Just yes or no, Ms. Carter. No. The judge turned to my parents. Did either of you make unauthorized copies of your daughter's house key? My parents exchanged a glance. My mother wiped her eyes. My father exhaled sharply. Yes, he admitted. But... No qualifiers, Judge Montoya snapped. Thank you. She looked down at her notes, then back up at us. In light of the evidence, she said slowly, I am granting restraining orders against all 3 respondents, Helen Carter, Richard Carter, and Savannah Carter. Duration, 2 years. Terms include no contact in person, by phone, by email, or via third parties. No social media harassment. No coming within 500 feet of Ms. Carter's home, workplace, or vehicle. Any violation will result in immediate legal consequences. My mother gasped. Savannah let out a strangled cry. My father muttered something under his breath that sounded like unbelievable. But Judge Montoya wasn't done. The escalation pattern from unauthorized key copying to attempted illegal entry is deeply concerning. Ms. Carter is entitled to the quiet enjoyment of her own home. I will not allow further harassment. The courtroom erupted. My mother wailed. My father called me a disgrace. Savannah shouted, You ruined my life, Riley. I hope you're happy. The judge banged her gavel. All of you out, now, or I'll hold you in contempt. Tyler stepped forward as I gathered my papers, his voice low but clear. They destroyed this family, he said, looking directly at my parents. Not Riley. I swallowed hard, my throat tight, my hands trembling. I walked out of the courtroom into the cool Portland air and felt Not free exactly, but light enough to breathe again. I thought the worst was behind me. But 3 months later, the district attorney would call me with news that proved this nightmare wasn't over. It was only changing shape. For the first time in months, silence wasn't threatening. It was peaceful. After the restraining orders were granted, my phone stopped buzzing every 10 minutes. My doorbell camera stopped lighting up with motion alerts that made my heart jump. No more crying voicemails from my mother. No more dagger-filled texts from Savannah. No more guilt-soaked monologues from my father through the walls of the hallway. For 6 weeks, life was gentle. Ethan came over more. He cooked dinner in my kitchen. We watched shows without me pausing every 5 minutes to check the cameras. We talked about work instead of family drama. He made me laugh again, real laughs, the kind that rumble through your chest instead of sitting like a pebble at the bottom of it. One night, while we ate Thai takeout on my couch, Ethan looked at me hesitantly. "You seem lighter," he said. "It's good to see." "It feels strange," I admitted, like the absence of a sound I'd gotten used to hearing. He put his arm around me. "You deserve quiet." I leaned my head on his shoulder. For a moment, I believed him. Then the district attorney's office called. I was in my car, parked outside the office after work, scrolling through emails when the unknown number flashed across my phone. "Ms. Carter," a brisk voice said when I answered. "This is Assistant District Attorney Morrison with Multnomah County. I'm calling regarding the incident involving your sister, Savannah Carter." My stomach dropped. "Yes, what about it?" "We're moving forward with criminal charges," he said. "Criminal trespass and attempted burglary." For a second, I forgot how to breathe. "Burglary?" I repeated, pulse hammering. "The footage from your security cameras is compelling," Morrison continued. "Combined with your previous police reports and the restraining order, there is a documented pattern of attempted unlawful entry. We believe we have sufficient grounds for prosecution." "Savannah, she was charged?" "She will be," he confirmed. "We'll be issuing formal notice shortly. We'll need you to testify at trial." I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead against the steering wheel. "Okay," I whispered. "I'll be there." Savannah didn't take the news well. Within 2 days, her GoFundMe doubled, with a new wave of donations from people who didn't know any better. She posted dramatic black and white selfies with captions like, "Being punished for trying to get my belongings. Some sisters are heartless. Imagine taking your own family to court." And beneath every post, there she was. Chloe, Ethan's ex, leaving supportive comments, sharing Savannah's posts on her story, writing things like, "No one deserves this. Some people change for the worse. You're so strong." It was like watching a vulture circle a wounded animal, not because it cared, but because it smelled opportunity. When I showed Ethan, his entire face hardened. "She's using this to get to me," he said quietly. "I'm blocking her. I should have a long time ago." He did it immediately. And for the first time, I felt no sting of jealousy, just exhaustion at how many people were willing to weaponize my trauma for entertainment. Savannah's job at the boutique let her go soon afterward. Apparently, pending burglary charges wasn't the vibe they wanted for their luxury brand aesthetic. I didn't celebrate. I didn't post anything. I didn't even tell Ethan at first. But that night, when he noticed I seemed distant, I finally said it out loud. "She lost her job." He looked at me carefully. Then he said, "It's not your fault." I wanted to believe him, truly. But all I could think was that I was the one who installed the cameras. I was the one who reported her. I was the one who refused to let her spin her lies unchecked. And somewhere, deep in the stubborn child part of my brain, shaped by years of emotional manipulation, a whisper asked, "Are you sure you're not the villain?" But then I remembered the key, the locksmith, the pounding fists on my door, my HR meeting, the threats, the crying theatrics, the GoFundMe lies. No, I wasn't the villain. I was the one who finally said no and meant it. The criminal trial took place 2 months later. Small courtroom, wooden benches. Savannah in a conservative blazer, her hair pulled back, the picture of innocence. My parents flanking her like stone pillars. I could feel their glares burning into the side of my face as I sat beside Daniel. The prosecution played everything. The footage of Savannah with the locksmith, her yelling at my door, her lies about being my roommate, the police reports, the timeline of harassment, the restraining order, the evidence folder I'd curated like a grim scrapbook of my own undoing. When I testified, I tried not to look at my parents, or at Savannah, or at the cluster of relatives behind them, looking at me like I'd killed something sacred. Instead, I focused on the judge, on Daniel, on the words I'd practiced over and over. I was scared. This is my home. They had already violated my boundaries multiple times. I didn't know what they were capable of anymore. Savannah's defense attorney tried to spin it. She was desperate. She was emotional. She just wanted to talk. She had nowhere to go. Lie. She wasn't trying to break in. She panicked. She made bad choices. But the footage didn't lie. Her own voice didn't lie. The locksmith's statement didn't lie. When the jury left to deliberate, my hands were cold. Ethan squeezed them from the row behind me. "This will be okay," he whispered. But I wasn't sure. Not until the jury walked back in less than 2 hours later. The forewoman stood. Her voice was steady. "We find the defendant, Savannah Carter, guilty on all counts." Time froze. My ears rang. Savannah gasped. Loud. My mother began to cry. Deep, broken sobs that shook her shoulders. My father muttered a string of curses under his breath, staring at me like he was memorizing my face for revenge. The judge thanked the jury and dismissed everyone. Daniel placed a hand on my arm. "You did everything right," he said. Outside the courtroom, a few of my relatives glared daggers at me. A few ignored me entirely. One, Aunt Joanne, walked up slowly and whispered, "I'm sorry we didn't believe you." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. Tyler stepped up beside me, clapped a hand on my shoulder, and said, "You survived something awful. Be proud of yourself." Ethan guided me toward the exit. "Let's go home," he murmured. Home. My home. The one I fought tooth and nail to protect. As we walked out into the afternoon sun, I realized something. The cameras didn't just record the nightmare. They saved me from it. Now, for the first time, the nightmare was ending. And I had finally won.